Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is a CPA with a master's in taxation. He has been a real estate investor since 2003 and has acquired, renovated, managed, and syndicated. He worked on Wall Street for 15 years as head of Tax Americanis. During his tenure, he managed and oversaw the tax department on complex transactions, including tax planning and structuring on syndication loans, mezzanine debt, principal contracts, and structural financing. Welcome, Jonathan Wee.
Tell us, how in the world did you find your way into the wonderful world of taxation?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be on your show, Dr. Allen. And how I got into taxation, it fell into my lap. So when I was studying in undergraduate at Rutgers University in Newark, I asked my older brother, I said, Eddie, what should I do, brother? Maybe you be my light and my North Star and help me, guide me. Because I was a little confused at the time. I was undecided. And I turned to my own natural brother who I trusted him and I love him so much. And I said, Eddie, you're my older brother. I trust you. Please guide me. I'm a little confused. When I was thinking like a sophomore. He said, well, I recommend either business, law, or accounting, because you can get a good job. You could be also a lawyer if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be a lawyer or an attorney, CPA. And I was like, okay. I said, let me look into accounting. So I took some accounting courses, and I kind of like math numbers, being my Asian background. And I studied that, and I did well. And I pursued accounting, and I majored in accounting. And then afterwards, everyone goes the CPA route because that's the normal progression. If you want to become a successful accountant, right? The designated CPA is very prestigious. So I studied very hard, and I took the Specker CPA Convisor course, and I studied hard. I worked during the day and I studied at night to do my CPA reviews. And when I took the exam, I was so like nervous on the exam that day. I didn't know. I was like, oh, can I pass this exam? I was so nervous. And then when I took the exam and I passed the exam, I was so happy. And that was one of my biggest moments in my life that I think I will remember. There's a couple of things: marriage, passing CPA exam. Those are the big items that you remember in your head. So I achieved that. And then I worked in a prestigious firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Big Four accounting firm. Mm-hmm. That's where I got my training as an accountant, as an auditor. I traveled to different pharmaceutical companies in Pennsylvania because I grew up in New Jersey. And I did like YF accounts and Johnson & Johnson, New Jersey. And I was learning the ropes, doing ticking and time, reconciliation, and building my what I call your judgment. Because over time, you build your judgment and your experience. Because after like a couple of years that that doesn't seem right materially, right? But when you're new, you can't really tell. But after like doing it for a few years, that's not right. Just looking at the numbers, it's not right. So then afterwards, I was working on a client in New York City called Credit Suisse, and they really liked my consulting work, my advisory. And the head of tax said, "I want you to come join my team. I really like you. I'll give you a nice offer." So I decided to go to Wall Street as in the banking world, and that's where I spent around 10 years working with him. Mm-hmm. And then I worked at Credit Suisse First Boston. I worked at UniCredit, some of these European banks. And I became ultimately head of tax at a company called Societe Generale, which is New Edge. Mm-hmm. And it was a very, challenging role and a very fun role too, because I was head of tax. I was being almost like a tax lawyer, advising front office. We had significant changes in Washington, D.C., Dodd-Frank, FATCA, very, stiff regulations coming in because of the financial crisis. Right. And so at that time, a lot of banks were hurting. There was a lot of, it was a recession, and it was a bad situation for us. I was kind of worried about my job in Wall Street. And then I decided to move from New York and stop the life of Wall Street and move to Dallas, which I moved like 3 years ago. And I did it just for my own health and my young daughter's sake, my family. Because my older brother, who I asked for guidance, moved to Dallas 3 years before. And he said, come down here. It's a better life for you. It's no income tax, and it's a better. You can raise your family, and you can actually afford a house that is not so expensive. So I decided to do that. Sell my house, and I left. So you understand. I had a great job, very established, head of tax. Me and my wife just quit our jobs, gave our notices with no medical, and had a young kid, and we left. We moved to Dallas and stayed in my brother's home for a few months. Okay.
That took some courage for sure.
Yeah. So I told my brother, I said, I need your help. I said, I need to live in your house for like a little bit until I get my feet back up. So I decided to just quit our job and not have the hustle and bustle of Wall Street and that kind of tough commute. My commute was like 2 hours one way, so it's 4 hours every day from New Jersey. So that's a 4-hour commute every single day, so it's a toll on your life. So I decided to move down. He was very gracious enough to help me, be my brother. And we lived there for like a month. And what I realized was I had to go rent because the kids were sort of fighting for the toys. And it sort of created some conflicts, right, within the family. So at the advice of my wife, so we had to move. So I got a consulting job because I'm very marketable. And then we moved to a 1-bedroom apartment, rented, and then we got a good price at the time. And then we're slowly looking for our home because we didn't know Dallas. We lived all our life in New Jersey. So I started looking around and I found a beautiful new home that's very affordable compared to New York City. We placed a deposit and then we wait for it to build. Like after 6-7 months, it was built and we could move in. So then we moved into that building, and in Dallas is where the growth, where I started building my commercial in Dallas. So it was like 2 years ago. I hired a mentor, Michael Blanc. He's a part of my mentorship, and they started guiding me how to underwrite, how to analyze deals, how to get deals, and that's how I started with my equity to get the first deal, and then I started helping another student, and ultimately I led my own deals, and now I'm at a point where I can lead my own deals with other partners, and also like the coach I have from Michael Blanc. And I also branch out to self-storage as well, but that's a very good asset class as well. So I branch out to multifamily self-storage, helping my other friends who needs my skill set and my help. And I helped them. We're closing in 2 weeks in that deal. So that's how I became a syndicator in self-storage and multifamily, but I'm still having my day job as a head of tax role in a French organization. And IT has $30 billion. I'm head of North America. And that's why my schedule is very busy. I have a challenging day job. And I also have another job, which is my multifamily business as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that getting your master's in taxation was certainly a smart move in terms of certainly making you very marketable, because I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of people out there who've gone through that process to get that kind of credentials and certification. Well, let's go back to your childhood. And what did you dream of becoming when you were a child?
When I was young, I know I wanted to be someone that's I'd be proud of, be someone to be great. And I went back and forth a couple of things, maybe like, being maybe a lawyer or being like an astronaut. But then when you get older, you realize those are fallacies. When you get older and older, and you get more to the reality stage, you said you really don't. I mean, can I really be a musician? You can't make much money. Can I be a starving artist? No. Can I really be an astronaut? I don't think I could be an astronaut unless I really, applied for it. But it wasn't my calling. So what I found out in life, and the beauty of life, is that you really don't know. It's stages. You go through stages of the unknown. Because otherwise, if you do know, there can be various consequences, right? So what happens is the beauty of life is you go through stages where you discover and you find your true self, right? And ultimately, that's how you make mistakes too, but you learn that way too. And ultimately, when you get older and older, you get more wiser and wiser, and you realize that, right? If I can go back in time, I would change things around if I knew what I know now. right? So it's very interesting. Life is a very interesting sort of dynamic, because when you're very young, you really don't know unless you don't know yourself really. So you really don't know what you really want to be, right? So at age 5 versus age 15, you have different aspirational goals. So it's really hard to define when you're very young, because it's not gonna be a reality in this case. Like for example, I fell in my laps. Like tax fell in my laps. It was something that I was calling for tax. It's like that. So
Yeah, it's that you found an opportunity there. So yeah.
yeah,
And it made sense at the time.
yeah.
Yeah, we definitely all are going to change over time, or at least hopefully. That is, if we're growing and developing, we're going to change. Where did you grow up?
So my story is a typical. I was born during when a war torn when the fall of Saigon. So a lot of everyone was emotionally hurt, distressed. The Communist Party, Ho Chi Minh, and the Viet Congs took over Saigon. They beat my dad. They threw me in jail, trying to escape. So we had to bribe the guards with gold because currency wasn't worth much. Devaluation devalued the Saigon currency. I was thrown in jail, and my uncle had to give him gold to bribe and say, "Hey, listen, he's only a little baby. Let him was only 2 years old." And I wasn't given really a bath or anything, So I was thrown in jail. My dad was beaten. They stole his money. So after the first attempt, we got thrown in jail. Second attempt, we tried to escape. My whole family, we got caught again. We got thrown in jail again. The third time, we escaped successfully on a boat that was bullet-ridden with holes. And we took a risk for our life. So we went on a boat, and the boat started sinking. And it was reaching a small island called Hainan in China. We put an SOS saying, "Hey, help us, we're gonna die." So my uncle put a rope against us, said, "Hey, all of us, we all die now. All people put a rope around you, we all die right here in this boat." But then thank God a little fisherman saw the SOS and he saved us. In a small island called Hainan. It's a very small island in China. And when we were there, they just gave us basically one potato for a family of 8 people. One potato, a small potato. And then my older brother had more sense, and he had to go steal rice for us. So he went to a local farmer, and the whole farm helped him, gave him a bath, and he gave him rice. So he gave rice back to the family. Wow. So we did that, and then after 30 days, we were starving, and then had no money, nothing. The captain goes, "The boat is fixed, but I need money now." And we had no money. We're almost dying. So he took a small boat, he dumped us there, and went back to Vietnam. And the boat was fixed. And some young guy goes, "Do you know how to drive a boat?" He said, "Not really, but I can try." And so someone just took the boat and then tried to drive somewhere with no map or nothing. Half take a gas, and some guy goes, "I want you to swim." So one guy who was really young and fit, he swam 3 hours. He came back and said, "That's Hong Kong. That's Hong Kong. We have to go there." He said, "Okay." He put the British flag up and just went straight into the Hong Kong. And then the Hong Kong goes, "Who is this? Identify yourself. You're not allowed to Hong Kong." And we didn't. We just went straight into the island, and people were just jumping out of the boat like a pack of sardines, because you're gonna die anyway. You have no gas, you have no food, you're gonna die anyway. And then the admiral at the time saw us. He said, "Holy smokes!" He goes, "Holy! I'm gonna take you in right now." He said, "You all welcome to Hong Kong Island." He goes, "You're a refugee of Vietnam," and he all saved us. At the time. So we lived in a refugee camp. Thank God. The admiral just took us in. And we lived there for a year, and then afterwards we were sponsored by our uncle in New Jersey. So I came to New Jersey, to America by the St. Joseph's Church. Give us free rent for a little bit, and then my dad was working whatever he did, to make ends meet. So we grew up in a small, tiny apartment, infested with roaches and rats. Slept on the floor with my 2 brothers, and that's how I kind of came to America, basically. And we just worked hard. I did a newspaper, the pizza when I was younger. I started working at age 12 years old, basically. To make ends meet.
Wow, an incredible story. So you were 12 years old when you came to the United States?
No, I came here when I was 5 years old. 5 years old, and then I started going to grammar school. Yeah, 5 years old. Yeah.
So all of that was going on before you were even 5 years old.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was very young, and yeah, I almost died when I was maybe 2 years old. So yeah,
Wow.
so yeah.
Wow. Now that is an incredible story. Wow. What a journey you and your family have been through and been on.
Yes.
And I'm sure that has had major consequences for your life. Well, welcome to the United States. I'm glad you made it here. I'm glad that there was someone in Hong Kong who actually saw your plight and was able to save you and your family.
Hmm.
Um, so, coming to the United States, well, you were young when you came, but I'm sure that had to have been a huge transition. Did you and your family even speak the language when you first came to the country?
No, my mom didn't. Well, my mom was a little interesting story. My dad didn't speak English. We didn't speak English. We spoke native Chinese. Um,
Hmm.
and my mom was working U.S. Embassy. She knew some English because she was schooled in languages. She knows French, Chinese, and Vietnamese.
Hmm.
So she's the one who spoke English, but the English wasn't that great.
Hmm.
Um, and it was hard because in the beginning it was a very different culture, right, from Vietnam. So coming here, people were very friendly. They want to help us, and it was in the '80s. It is a great time. It was a great decade. And we grew up in a blue collar area in New Jersey, and we did what we can. And I think I was grateful for the people who helped us. When I was young,
Hmm.
and they're very nice people. So.
Well, how did you? What were some of the things that, as you were making those transitions, what were uh, the differences that you noticed, and how did you adapt to the differences?
I noticed that people were always yelling, and it was a war-torn country. There was a lot of corruption and a lot of things going on. A lot of bombs going off, tanks running around. So over here was civilized, right? There's no tanks, there's no bombs, there's no helicopters. There's no military. There's no people beating you up. There's no yelling and beating the wives up. It was common culture to beat wives up, and they're so
Mm.
angry all the time, the men, and it was a very vulgar sort of barbaric society. Warring states, feudalism, kind of feudalism. And
Right.
because you're in a country that a war basically between the communists and I guess the West, right? Democracy.
Right.
And unfortunately, US lost that war because I don't know. I never knew why US. When I was older, I asked a question to my boss in the bank. I said, John, why did US, the superpower, lost to Vietnam? I said, I don't understand this. I was too
Mm.
young. And there's a lot of different things, but it was just like, it was very complicated. But I was like, oh my God, I just couldn't believe it. I was still in Saigon right now and had to fled if we won the war. So my life
Mm.
would have been very, very different if I was in Saigon, right?
I'm sure it would be, yes. Yeah.
Right. So the path would have been very different. So I read YouTube because I was trying to research why did we lose, and I see so many things happen that's unbelievable when I read those you study the Vietnam War. But ironically, right now, some people like me go back and do business, and they're happy. So it's a very
Mhm.
ironic sort of situation. But some parents will disown you and say, "Hey, I left you here for a reason, and why you go back?"
Yeah.
But there's animosity, right? So that's what I see in the difference.
Well, phenomenal. Phenomenal story. Um, as you have grown, and you've been in the United States most of your life, but just looking back over the last 10, 15 years of your life, how are you different now than you were 10, 15 years ago, both psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually?
Okay, so 10, 15 years ago, I'm 44, sometimes it's 34, 30s. Okay, so when I was maybe like in my late 20s, early 30s, I was more immature. I didn't fully understand psychology of other people. I was a little bit conceited. I wasn't so understanding of the feelings. But when you get older and you mature more, you be careful of how you say things and how you approach things. Because it's your perception of how you say it that you look like more like reasonable and more approachable. As opposed to when you're young, when you're young, like 18-year-old, 20-year-old, you're like cocky, like, oh, I can do this, like I'm invincible, I can do anything I want to. I got muscles, and it's a different perspective when you get older, because what you realize is you have to be strong forever, and you're actually very fragile. Life is very fragile. You can get hit a bus and you could die tomorrow. You have, the famous basketball player died, Kobe, I think Bryant, he passed away, right? So look how strong he was, look at how popular he was. But in an instant, his life is gone. So what you realize, if you got older, what you realize is you look through the water, look through the lake, and you realize life is very fragile. You are just a small pond in a big ocean. And you are not the only one. So you have to treat life, you appreciate life, what you have, and you have to also appreciate that as time goes older, you can get older, you can get more frail. So what happens is that your body breaks down, you're slower. So you have to, when you're younger, you have to make an impact and build a legacy for your children and grandchildren. When you get older, you don't have the time is against you, and also you don't have the ability as strong or confidence when you're in a younger age, right? So those are things that I learned when you're older now. But when you're 20-some years old, you're not thinking about those. You're thinking about going partying, you having hanging with your friends. You're thinking about making your life good, but not necessarily planning for ahead in the future what you want. So it's a very different mindset too.
Mm-hmm. I find it hard to picture you as ever having been cocky or conceited.
Yeah.
And also, were you a partying person when you were in your 20s? I find that hard to conceive too, looking at you now.
No, not necessarily. But I like to sometimes go with my friends and have a drink. So not really necessarily a party person, but I was on a chess team. I played chess in the clubs. I study hard and then just hang out with my friends, and that was pretty much it. So, I try to have that sort of perfect picture of life, like a little house on a prairie, or, have a nice white picket fence. That was the ideal vision. However, in life, what you find out that doesn't happen that way. And it's very interesting.
Well, my guest today is Jonathan Wee, and he is a CPA with a master's in taxation. And Jonathan was telling us just a little bit about his early life and some of the struggles that he went through as a very young boy, and the struggles his family went through to get here from Vietnam here to the United States. A very fascinating story. Jonathan is now a successful real estate investor, and he has holdings in various different states throughout the country. He currently lives in Dallas, Texas, with his wife and his daughter. So, Jonathan, we're coming to the end of our interview here. It has been a real delight having you with us. I have one more question that I ask all of my guests. Before I go to that, can you tell our viewers and our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. I have my website, www.greystonecapgroup.com, and it has my information. It has my calendar. You could book a time with me. I do 30-minute sessions, so feel free to come and talk to me and ask me any question you like.
Okay. Jonathan, my last question is, when you leave this earth, how would you like your epitaph to read?
I want people to be kind to one another, respect each other, respect the earth and nature, don't destroy our planet, help the younger, help the weaker, be generous, and be very successful in what you do and be happy with what you do. That's what I'll say.
Wonderful epitaph. Sounds to me like you're well on the way, and I hope you have a long and prosperous life. Thank you, Jonathan, for being on our program. I hope we can have future conversations because you do have a very fascinating life, and I would really love to continue our discussions in the near future here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.